Alright, look, I went back and forth about whether or not to do a spoiler review or not for this movie, because at first it sort of felt like maybe impossible to talk about whether or not it works without getting into the things that are definitely meant to be surprises for the audience, but have everything to do with what works or what doesn't work in the film. And well, for a while I thought I needed to do one of those don't watch past this point warnings. Ultimately, I didn't think it was necessary, so this is kind of that, but not really. I'm not going to do big spoilers in the review, and that basically means I'm not going to get into certain plot specifics like the entire third act of the movie, basically. But since there's things like mood, atmosphere, meaning, impact, etc. being alluded to, if you're super spoiler sensitive, I'll let you know right now I'm giving it a strong 9 out of 10, call it a definite must-see, and if that's all you need to know, come back and watch this after, okay? It's a new code, I'm breaking it in. I went down a size. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is at once the most and least Quentin Tarantino movie the writer-director has yet assembled, a work so wholly dedicated to full sensory immersion into his particular cultural and artistic fixations, fandoms, fantasies, fetishes, what have you, that in some respects it makes the Kill Bill cycle feel like a restrained stroll through a memorabilia museum. Name a tropey Tarantinoism and it's present and accounted for, over and over again. Juicy roles for hard-working older character actors, romantic recreations of pre-gentrified Los Angeles, lengthy pop culture discussions seemingly for the sake of themselves, tough guys being tough, pretty girls going barefoot, dark comedy, scenes of brutal violence, although a lot fewer than one might expect, that veer between tense realism and intentional cartoon artifice, meticulously curated classic rock soundtrack, and above all else, a swollen-hearted, overflowing love of film and film history with, of course, specific attention lavished upon jointly overlooked realms of mainstream kitsch and the hidden gems of the grimy B-movie scene. But unlike his previous swings through such material, this time there's an almost wholly organic feel to the indulgence, to the point where it almost doesn't feel like indulgence at all, right up until the point where it becomes, as it must, absolutely that. But even then, and still more so before that point, there's a sense of authenticity and humanity that feels more consistently a priority than it has in anything the art house A-list most committed fan of artificiality has attempted since at least Jackie Brown. Now, on one level, the reason why must seem obvious. The film is a work of meta-pop historical fiction set in Hollywood circa 1969, amid the roiling cultural upheaval sweeping the United States and the adjacent impending collapse of the traditional studio system, orbiting, but, and this is key, not centering, Margot Robbie as the doomed rising starlet Sharon Tate in the weeks and months before, as history records, she'll be brutally murdered by the Manson family cult, heralding the end of innocent zeitgeist shift in LA, Hollywood, and the 60s that one can imagine seeming like a pop culture apocalypse unfolding to the now 56-year-old Tarantino as a movie and TV obsessed child of the time. But while Robbie's transcendent turn as the angelic yet achingly human Tate is the sun around which Once Upon a Time's sense of time, space, and soul spin, its protagonists, heroes would be pushing it for various reasons, are a fictional duo cut more from Tarantino's more familiar mold on multiple levels. Leonardo DiCaprio is Rick Dalton, an aging 1950s TV Western star who probably would have transitioned handily to big screen leading man in the old days, but those days are coming to an end and are leaving him behind. Instead, he's growing older, gruffer, more frustrated, and alcoholic, doing bit parts in B-movies, reliant more and more on the loyal presence of Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth, officially his famously tough and infamously mysterious stuntman, but these days more of a driver, ready-made alibi, paid drinking buddy, and legitimate best friend. The main stretch of the film follows these three characters through a long, seemingly average day wherein Rick struggles with a promising but difficult TV guest starring role, Tate enjoys a screening of her latest movie with a regular audience on the DL, Robbie making a quietly joyful reaction to a happy, funny moment somehow heartbreaking, while Cliff runs errands for Rick and ends up investigating something strange going on with a group of hippie chicks camped out at the Spawn movie ranch where he and Cliff used to play cowboys in happier times. And if you're the sort of person for whom the word Spawn movie ranch makes your eyebrows rise up, you are the sort of person who probably doesn't need to do any homework before they see this movie. This is a snapshot movie, a languid hangout of a rising star, fading star, satellite to a star at a particular moment in time, followed by a plot turn, a several-month time jump, and a major tonal shift, at which point the rationale for grounding this film in the realm of realistic but not necessarily accurate historical fiction and the mix of real and unreal characters snaps into sharp relief, and what was, for a time, the least confrontational Tarantino film ever sets about becoming what will definitely be one of the year's most controversial conversation pieces. As I said, it feels wrong to talk about the details of the film's final stretch, but suffice to say the film's riskiest gambit is also where, at least at this early juncture, it might not fully stick the landing in my estimation. Ironically, for the same reason the rest of it works so goddamn well. It's such a treat for the rest of it to see this particular bag of tricks in restrained, focused mode that a sudden veer into something else that would arrive like a mind-blowing out-of-nowhere smack in the face from any other filmmaker perhaps feels expected, even obligatory from this particular name on the marquee. But before that point, in the broadest sweep of its runtime, this is basically a hangout movie, or the Quentin Tarantino version of a hangout movie, and a damn good one at that, where not very much happens, but also everything happens to the characters as they go about their day and have no reason to think of it as a consequential one. And we're invited to observe the details of their quietly revealing routines and soak in the thrift store nostalgia atmosphere that for once doesn't feel in either fun or tedious ways that his films sometimes have in the past, like directorial affectation. Yeah, the characters are still speaking to one another in a shorthand of arcane movie references, but that's because they're all mid-tier film industry workers rather than just it's the Tarantino-verse and that's where everyone talks like that. Sure, everyone cruises the strip in classic cars, listening to a lot of vintage LA rock radio because that's what would be on the radio then. Bruce Lee, Steve McQueen, the Playboy Mansion, and various semi-obscure but quite real professionals of the spaghetti western film industry turn up as supporting characters or name drops, not because Quentin, but because they either actually were or would have been connected to the people and events being depicted. Tate goes to see one of the Dean Martin, tacky but then popular Matt Helm movies, not for the satisfaction of kitsch connoisseurs in the audience, but because that was the movie she was in at the time. It's Quentin being Quentin, but it works on multiple levels this time, and what I will say of the stuff I can't say much about is that the sure-to-be-talked-about surprising place Once Upon a Time in Hollywood ultimately goes does absolutely make organic, even inevitable sense with the slow burn build-up that's come before, and the thematic energies that have been building beneath the surface, be it the rose-colored nostalgia for the endearing kitschiness of old Hollywood at the end of its road, Dalton and Booth as the apotheosis of the kind of should-have-been-bigger B-list journeyman actors Tarantino has always hero-worshipped and in fact made it his own real-life secondary vocation to revitalize the careers of. The utter contempt for the Mansons as people and conceptually as the harbingers of real-world violence intruding to slaughter the innocence of Hollywood Americana and the movies. How could we not have predicted that this finally would be the villain set that Tarantino would hate most of all? And of course, a bracingly earnest and I would say very successful swing by both the director and especially Robbie to let Sharon Tate be seen as a person once again, instead of a monument to tragedy in our own projections upon her. Again, this is all still Quentin being Quentin, but in a measured, deliberate context where there's human depth underneath it, in addition to dozens of different ways to read its eventual denouement in terms of message, moral themes, etc., to the point where you almost don't notice that while present, the flashes of cartoon ultraviolence and poetically vulgar trash talk are almost playfully refusing to dominate the scene as they typically do until, well, they kinda have to. Ironically, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might even be more jam-packed with references, callbacks, and nostalgic bric-a-brac than even the Kill Bill films, but it's also the Tarantino production where they've been the least overwhelming. His best film, I'm not so sure, but it may well be his most human. 9 out of 10, a fascinating must-see we'll be talking about months from now.